When the second dream was safely in the jar and the top was screwed down, the BFG held it to his ear.
"Oh, no! Oh, swipe my swoggles!"
"What's the matter?"
"It's a troggle-humper!"
he shouted. His voice was filled with fury and anguish.
"Oh, save our solos, this is a bad, bad dream. It is a nightmare. Oh, you's never letting it go. If I do, then some poor little toddler will be having the most curd-bloodlin' time. I is exploding it as soon as I get home."
Sophie suddenly cried out, "I can see it! There's something in there!"
"Of course there's something in there," the BFG said.
"But you told me dreams were invisible."
"They is always invisible until they is captured. After that, they is losing a little of their invisibility."
Inside the jar, Sophie could see the faint scarlet outline of something that looked like a mixture between a blob of gas and a bubble of jelly. "It's wiggling all over the place," Sophie cried. "It'll bash itself to bits."
"Well, the nastier the dream, the angrier it's getting when it is in prison."
The BFG started putting the bottles back into the suitcase. "Is that all?" Sophie asked. "Are we going?"
"I is so upset by this truggle-humping, bog-thumping grub switcher that I's not wishing to go on. Dream-catching is finished for today."
Soon Sophie was back in the waistcoat pocket, and the BFG was racing home as fast as he could go. When at last they came again onto the hot, yellow wasteland, all the other giants were sprawled out on the ground, fast asleep.
"They is always having 50 winks before they go scumpering off to hunt human beings in the evening," the BFG said. "Giants is only sleeping every then and now, not nearly as much as human beings. Human beings is crazy for sleeping."
Suddenly, the BFG gave a jump in the air.
"By gum frog, I is just having the most whoopsie-whiffling idea."
"What?" He galloped off, fast to his cave, with Sophie hanging on tight to the rim of the pocket. He rolled back the stone. He entered the cave. He was very excited.
"You stay where you is in my pocket, Huggy Bee. We is doing this lovely bit of buck-swassling both together."
He laid aside the dream-catching net, but hung on to the suitcase. He ran across to the other side of the cave and grabbed the long trumpet thing. With the suitcase in one hand and the trumpet in the other, he dashed out of the cave.
"Peep your head up, good," the BFG said. "Then you will get a fine winkle of what is going on."
When the BFG came near to the sleeping giants, he slowed his pace. He crept on his toes towards the ugly brutes. They were still snoring loudly. The BFG tiptoed around them. He went past the gizzard gulper, the blood bottler, the meat dripper, the child chewer. Then he stopped. He had reached the flesh lump eater. He pointed at him. Then he looked down at Sophie and gave her a big wink. He knelt on the ground and very quietly he opened the suitcase. He took out of it the glass jar containing the terrible, nightmarish troggle-humper. At that point, Sophie guessed what was going to happen next. They were about 10 feet away from the flesh lump eater's face. The snoring, snorting noise he was making was disgusting. Taking infinite care, the BFG unscrewed the top of the glass jar and tipped the squiggling, squirming, faintly scarlet troggle-humper into the wide end of his long trumpet. He put the other end of the trumpet to his lips. He aimed the instrument directly at the flesh lump eater's face. He took a deep breath, puffed out his cheeks, and then, whoosh, he blew. Sophie saw a flash of pale red go darting towards the giant's face. For a split second it hovered above the face. Then it was gone. It seemed to have been sucked up the giant's nose, but it all happened so quickly, Sophie couldn't be sure.
"We had better be skiddling away quick to where it is safe," the BFG whispered.
He trotted off for about 100 yards, then he stopped. He crouched low to the earth.
"Now," he said, "we is waiting for the gun and flames to begin."
They didn't have to wait long. The air was suddenly pierced by the most fearful roar Sophie had ever heard, and she saw the flesh-lump-eater's body, all 54 feet of it, rise up off the ground and fall back again with a thump. Then it began to wriggle and twist and bounce about in the most violent fashion. It was quite frightening to watch.
"Yeah!" roared the flesh-lump-eater. "Ah!"
"He's still asleep," the BFG whispered. "The terrible troggle-humping nightmare is beginning to hit him."
"Save us!" screamed the flesh-lump-eater. "He's after me!"
The thrashing of limbs and the waving of arms became more violent by the second.
"It's Jack!" bellowed the flesh-lump-eater. "Jack is after me! Oh, spare me, Jack!"
"Who is this Jack he's on about?" Sophie whispered. "Well, Jack is the only human being all giants is frightened of," the BFG told her. "They is all hearing that Jack is a famous giant killer."
"Save me!" screamed the flesh-lump-eater. "Have mercy on this poor little giant! The beanstalk! He's coming at me with his terrible spike-sticking beanstalk!"
"Us giants," the BFG whispered, "is not knowing very much about this dreaded human being called Jack. We is knowing only that he's a famous giant killer, and that he is owning something called a beanstalk." Sophie couldn't stop smiling. "What is you griggling at?" the BFG asked her, slightly nettled. "I'll tell you later," Sophie said. The awful nightmare had now gripped the great brute to such an extent that he was tying his whole body into knots.
"Do not do it, Jack! I swear I has never gobbled a single human being in all my wholesome life."
"Liar," said the BFG. Just then, one of the flesh-lump-eater's flailing fists caught the still fast asleep, meat-dripping giant smack in the mouth. At the same time, one of his furiously thrashing legs kicked the snoring, gizzard-gulping giant right in the guts. Both the injured giants woke up and leapt to their feet.
"He is swiping me right in the mouth!"
yelled the meat-dripper.
"He's bung-swaggling me smack in the guts!" shouted the gizzard-gulper.
The two of them rushed at the flesh-lump-eater and began pounding him with their fists and feet. The wretched flesh-lump-eater woke up with a bang. He awoke straight from one nightmare into another. He roared into battle, and in the bellowing, thumping rough and tumble that followed, one sleeping giant after another got stepped upon or kicked. Soon all 9 of them were on their feet, having the most almighty free-for-all. Blood flowed, noses went crunch, the giants roared and screamed and cursed. The BFG smiled a big, wide smile of absolute pleasure.
"I is loving it when they is all having a good toughened rumble."
"They'll kill each other," Sophie said.
"Never. Those beasts is always bishing and walloping at one another. Soon it'll be getting dusk, and they'll be galloping off to fill their tummies."
And the BFG headed back to the cave. The big friendly giant was seated at the great table in his cave, and he was doing his homework. Sophie sat cross-legged on the tabletop nearby, watching him at work. The glass jar containing the one and only good dream they'd caught that day stood between them. The BFG, with great care and patience, was printing something on a piece of paper with an enormous pencil. "What are you writing?" Sophie asked him.
"Every dream is having its special label on the bottle. How else could I be finding the one I am wanting in a hurry?"
"But can you really and truly tell what sort of dream it's going to be, simply by listening to it?"
"I can."
"But how? Is it by the way it hums and buzzes?"
"Why, you is more or less right," the BFG said. "Every dream in the world is making a different sort of buzzy hum music."
"Do you mean tunes?"
"I is not meaning tunes."
"Then what do you mean?"
"Well, human beings is having their own music, right or left."
"Right. Lots of music."
"And sometimes Human beings is very overcome when they is hearing wondrous music. They is getting shivers down their spindles. Right or left? Right. So, the music is sending a message. I don't think the human beings is knowing what that message is, but they is loving it just the same.
Yeah, that's about right, Sophie said.
But because of these jump-squiffling ears of mine, I is not only able to hear the music that dreams is making, but I is understanding it also. I can read it. It's like a language.
I find that just a little hard to believe, Sophie said. The BFG regarded Sophie gravely, with those huge eyes of his.
The matter with human beings is that they is absolutely refusing to believe in anything unless they is actually seeing it right in front of their own schnozzles.
He turned away contemptuously from Sophie and resumed his writing. Sophie moved over to read what he had written so far. Here is what it said.
This dream is about how I is saving my teacher from drowning. I is diving into the river from a high bridge, and I is dragging my teacher to the bank, and then I is giving him the kiss of death.
The kiss of what? Sophie asked.
The BFG stopped writing and raised his head slowly. I is telling you once before, he said quietly, that I is never having a chance to go to school. I do my best. You is a lovely little girl, but please remember that you is not exactly Miss Know-Everything yourself.
I'm sorry. I really am. It's very rude of me to keep correcting you.